Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
All right, you guys. So a little something different today because news broke while I was recording today's episode. If you haven't caught that yet, my interview with Curtis Allen of the Seahawks Draft Blog, going over all of the Seahawks salary cap implications for this year and next year and assessing where they stand, and then also where they stand compared to the rest of the division. That the Seahawks have made a move at quarterback. We were expecting this. We were looking forward to this, or looking ahead to this. And I speculated on the show the other day that maybe they were out there trying to find something a little bit better than what they've normally done for that third quarterback position. Ever since John Schneider took over as GM of the Seahawks, and he was certainly in lockstep with Pete Carroll throughout the last 15 years in this philosophy, that despite the fact that John used to talk all the time about how he'd like to draft a quarterback every year, like his mentor Ron Wolf did in Green Bay, that things never worked out for them to develop or even commit to trying to develop a third quarterback. And so we've seen them cycle through guys like Jake Luton and, Holton Ahlers was the guy throughout camp last week. There are a number of other quarterbacks over the years where they've brought in. It just didn't really have much more upside than break glass in case of emergency. And so we thought maybe they were out there trying to look a little deeper and find a guy for Ryan Grubb to get his hands on and develop a little bit, especially considering Geno Smith's age, the uncertainty of his future. Well, today they signed Jaren Hall. And this is a guy that, if you follow me on Twitter at Seahawks Forever, that once he was cut by the Vikings, I speculated maybe would be a fit for Ryan Grubb. There were some other options. Tyler Huntley is a guy that a lot of fans wanted. When Michael Pratt was cut in Green Bay, I thought maybe if that's a guy they liked in the draft process this last year, maybe they would go after him. But Hall is a guy that made sense to me because he just seems to be more of a fit for what Ryan Grubb is trying to do, more of a downfield passer. Not the biggest guy in the world, not the strongest guy in the world, not the most traits-heavy quarterback dripping with talent, but someone you can work with. So I wanted to come on today and just kind of give you a little bit of my thoughts on Jaren Hall, a little bit of his background, and show you some video, and then let you guys decide what you think about this signing. Now, to make room on the practice squad, the Seahawks had to release a guy, obviously, that I'm like, because back here behind me, my Cougar jersey kind of gives it away, obviously, as does the WSU tattoo. Aesop Winston Jr. gets released. Look, a lot of people are upset by this already today. I think Winston's a talented player. At one point, just a few weeks ago, I had him on my final 53. I thought he had some versatility. He could play inside out. He could help in the return game. But look, this guy's 27, 28 years old. He hasn't gotten the opportunity yet to stick on a 53. There's no guarantee that he won't be back again at some point in the future. We've seen the Seahawks do this over the years with guys. Cody Thompson comes to mind, where, it's sort of a constant churn, unless he gets picked up by somebody else that maybe he'll be back, and we haven't seen the last of Aesop Winston. But they needed a third quarterback. Somebody asked me today, why is this even necessary? You have to protect yourself. I mean, we've seen teams have multiple injuries at the quarterback position. And, if you're a team that fancies themselves as a contender and is trying to win now, and every move that you've made in this offseason was to demonstrate that you are trying to win now, that this is not a rebuild, even though you've moved on from your legendary ex-coach. You got to protect yourself at the most important position on the field. So, little background on Jaren Hall. Went to BYU, obviously had 2 full seasons there as a starter, 65% completion percentage at BYU, a very high volume passing offense there. 51 touchdowns to 11 interception, about a 4-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. That's outstanding, especially in that kind of volume. Almost 6,000 yards passing. And you'll see a little bit of this on tape too. He can move around and he can do some things for you with his feet too. 657 yards rushing and 6 touchdowns. These numbers are just from his last 2 seasons at BYU when he was the full-time starter. He did get some time the year before that as well. And then with the Vikings, drafted last year in the 5th round, He got into some regular season games. Actually, after Kirk Cousins was hurt, he had a couple of starts, but he had to leave. He had to leave at least one of those after getting injured, replaced by Joshua Dobbs. In the regular season, 13 out of 20, 168 yards and an interception. Then he had an outstanding preseason this year, 339 yards passing, 4 touchdowns to 0 interceptions, and most people thought he would make the squad in Minnesota. Here is what Lance Zierlein of NFL.com had to say about Hall coming out in the draft. An undersized pocket quarterback with unimpressive arm strength, but Hall's field command gives him a shot to make it at the next level. He throws with excellent ball placement to targets on the move and delivers a feathery, soft, deep ball with accuracy. His lack of drive velocity creates smaller margins for error, and his timing needs to be impeccable to beat NFL man coverage. Hall operates with ideal poise from the pocket. He does an adequate job of reading coverages and getting rid of the ball without taking sacks. The size and arm strength will concern some teams, but offenses operating out of a heavy play action with levels-based route concepts could target him as a solid future backup. That last sentence. Offenses operating out of a heavy play action with levels-based route concepts could target him as a solid future backup. And this is where I think he's a fit with what Ryan Grubb is trying to do. And I think you'll see a little bit here from the video that we're going to get into that there are some stylistic similarities to Sam Howell, although not nearly the arm strength, as Zierlein mentioned, that Howell has. This is from his final preseason game against the Eagles. 70% completions. This is actually an incompletion, but I wanted to show it to you because look at the ball placement. Right? This is what Zierlein's talking about. I mean, this is a ball, this receiver, number 81, did not make the final roster for the Vikings, but if that's Jordan Addison, if that's Justin Jefferson, like that's a catch, right? And then you see now, I told you can move around a little bit, the creativity and the awareness in the pocket. I like this play. You know, the pocket collapses, obviously. He makes a quick decision to duck, a little bit of Russell Wilson there, gets away and just gets the ball out in space for a guy to make a play. And then that leads to the touchdown here. And you might think this isn't perfect ball placement, but if you look at it from the end zone angle now, you can see that the rush was starting to come at him off left tackle. And he had to adjust to that a little bit. He knew he had plenty of room there. Nice little touchdown here. This is the kind of throw that I look for in young quarterbacks. Can you throw the seam route and layer it in there, right? Over the linebacker, splitting the safeties. It's anticipation. It's timing. That's outstanding. Now, this is from regular season action last year against Atlanta. Another example here. Let's go back and look at that one again. Where there's all sorts of reps on tape from Hall where he shows his poise. And Zierlein mentions that as well in his scouting report. He doesn't seem to ever really get panicked. This would be a play we see a lot of young quarterbacks would hesitate, pump the ball, pull it back down, maybe try to bail out the other way, get caught for a huge sack. Little play action here. Naked bootleg, rusher right in his face, running free, just gets rid of the ball, changes his arm angle. He's able to get it out in the flat to his back for a nice gain, or to his tight end for a nice little gain here. Another look at it from this angle here. And you can see right there, like that's where a lot of quarterbacks would, would freak out. But he doesn't. And then that leads to a big shot here. Again, just, this isn't, you might look at this and go, Danny's wide open. It's not the most beautiful spiral in the world, but it's just, he recognizes where the mismatch was. He had Alexander Madison split out wide. He had a little bit of a coverage mismatch there, recognizes it and just gets rid of the ball and makes a big play. I think the important thing here is that I am not trying to say that Jaren Hall is a starting caliber long-term quarterback, that the Seahawks may have found their guy. But I do think that this is different than what we've seen them do in the past. That they took a little more time. They could have just brought PJ Walker back to the practice squad. And I think that's what the previous regime would have done, because that's what they've shown they do. Let's just have a warm body on the practice squad to run the scout team and, just in case things go wrong. They took a little more time this time. I would expect, and it'll be interesting if we get any enlightenment on this later in the day when reporters are able to, or tomorrow, talk to Hall, talk to McDonald about it. I would imagine there was a little bit of a market for Jaren Hall and that he had to weigh his options, and there might have had to be some recruiting going on from the Seahawks standpoint. Now, as I mentioned, some fans have expressed disappointment that we didn't get Tyler Huntley to come here after the Browns cut him. He ends up going back to the Ravens, obviously, a place he's familiar with. And my response to that is this: I don't think Huntley is as much of a Ryan Grubb style quarterback as Jaren Hall may be. Huntley is more of a guy who's creative, makes things happen on the run and with his feet. I think Grubb wants guys that can be surgical in the passing game and get the ball downfield. I think in a perfect world, he wants a guy with a stronger arm than Hall, but those guys aren't available after the cut to 53. They're just not. But I think he sees a skill set here that he could work with if the Seahawks ever need to call on their third quarterback. And I mean, if you want to go big picture and look even farther down the road, right? Seahawks will have a big decision to make next offseason with Geno Smith. Huge cap hit. He's getting older. Depending on what kind of season he has this year, we're going to be talking next offseason about either moving on from Geno or extending Geno, because just bringing him back on the last year of his deal at that cap hit, I think it's north of $35 million next year, isn't going to make sense. If they were to move on from him and give Sam Howell a shot as the starting quarterback or draft a guy, makes a lot more sense to bring a guy in like Jaren Hall, who, as Lance Zierlein said in his draft profile, could project as a long-term quality backup in this league. Those guys are hard to find. And the ones that have a reputation as a quality backup, veterans that have proven themselves, they're expensive. They're expensive. That's one of the reasons the Seahawks made the move for Sam Howell. Whether or not you believe he can be a franchise quarterback in the future, he's certainly a very capable backup at worst, in my opinion. And he's $1 million cap hit. So, you go out on the open market, even if a team has an injury at quarterback this week, goes out and signs Ryan Tannehill, he's probably not going to play for less than $4 million a year, or at least the opportunity to make $4 or $5 million a year. And some of the top backups get more than that. Drew Lock's deal, I think, with incentives, if he were to get to play a lot this year, I think can pay him as much as $8 million, if I'm not mistaken, just as an example. So I think it's an interesting move. I think it's a good use of a practice squad spot. I think it's worth taking a shot on to see if you can develop a guy that's got a little bit more to work with than the typical quarterback. For example, as I said, Vikings fans and a lot of analysts, people that cover the team there, were surprised that Hall was let go. There were a lot of scouts and draft analysts last year who were much higher on him than the consensus, who thought that it was a steal to get him in the 5th round. And that after the preseason he had this year, that he would make the team. The Vikings cut him. That was a surprise to some, in lieu of signing Brett Rippon when he was released by the Chicago Bears. Now, Brett Rippon, right? I have a very emotional attachment to the Rippon family. And, but let's get real. I mean, Rippon's with his 4th or 5th organization now. He's kind of on the Josh Johnson career path at this point. The Seahawks had him in for a little bit last year themselves. He got an opportunity with the Rams last year. We saw how that goes. Is Brett Rippon's ceiling higher than Jaren Hall's potentially? Now, maybe his floor is a little higher because he's played more, and that's what the Vikings are concerned with. They were built to win, and then they lose J.J. McCarthy. They're going with Sam Darnold. Maybe they just wanted a guy that's got a little more experience. I don't know, but I thought that one was surprising, given Kevin O'Connell and how much he likes young quarterbacks. And I think you could see the work even that O'Connell has done with Hall already and how comfortable he looked this preseason. Not a bad idea to take a young quarterback that's been tutored for a year plus by Kevin O'Connell. That's going to do it. I just wanted to kind of address that, get it in, a little bonus episode today. Tell me what you think of this. Most of my episodes, if you watch the show, are longer. Some include interviews and analysis, and they're a little bit more graphically produced. This is one that I was able to throw together pretty quickly and get it up for you all Let me know what you think. If you want to see more of this, I do have access to the NFL's All 22 database. And so it takes a couple of days to get that stuff. But what if I did a best plays of the week, midweek during the season of the things that I liked that we saw from the Seahawks the previous game, and maybe not even the obvious highlights, but some of the unsung kind of stuff that led to some of the bigger plays. Let me know what you think. All the ways to support the show down in the description. Follow me on Twitter at Seahawks Forever, forever and always. Go Hawks. See you next time.